Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames, and I'm back again with my new mini-series for what I want in 2026. And I come from the big publishers, and today I'm going to talk about Sony. The system that I've actually, strangely, oddly, played the least amount this generation. I ended up playing more Xbox Series S and Series X than my PS5, and definitely a lot more Switch, and, sort of Switch too, mostly because I'm on Soft Monday. But yeah, Sony's sort of like the people's champ usually, but for me, I barely touched it at all, mostly because I hate the controller. But hey, I got a cool Victrix Pro BFG controller that saved my butt this generation. But yeah, going forward into 2026, I think we're all kind of hoping for maybe just more from Sony in general, because 2025 was odd. I'm trying to remember what even came out, because Marathon got that big delay. Ghost of Yotei was in October, and I don't even remember if they had anything before that. Sony's been this weird sort of position where they've quietly had a carbon monoxide leak in their house, but nobody knows it because nobody can smell it. There's been 12 live service games that they promised under their previous dipshit leader Jim Ryan, but on the other hand, most of them have gotten canceled, including a God of War one from Bluepoint, an unnamed one from Sony Bend, and then various other ones like the Spider-Man multiplayer and the Last of Us factions. So it's been a sort of disaster. And of course, part of that 12 live service push was Concord, which lasted all about 10 days. Sony's in a weird position where, okay, well, they got Tokon coming out next year, and they got Saros, and they got Wolverine. So a very Marvel-y sort of year, plus Housemarque's up, spiritual successor to Returnal. So I think their 2026 is just in general just going to be better than it was in 2025. And obviously I like Ghost of Yotei. I'm a fan of the Ghost franchise. But I just think next year looks to be just a better year overall for Sony. So I think it's going to be a little bit more a little more bright sunny days for them ahead. But what I would like to see from Sony more than anything is actually kind of strangely just more things like Tokon. I would like to see more sort of outreach games or sort of dream game collabs where maybe your big giant first-party studios, they're going to be locked into their 5-year development cycle for their big open-world walking sad dad simulators. But on the other hand, I like the idea that Sony, or at least Sony XDev, reached out to Arc System Works and hey, let's do a fighting game. Let's do a Marvel fighting game. That sounds like fun. Let's do that. So I'd actually like to see more of that from Sony in 26, where they're sort of using their reach or their connections to sort of go to other maybe smaller but talented publishers and kind of making things their own. I mean, again, Helldivers 2 was not necessarily a massive AAA sized budget game from a huge developer with 1,000 people working on it or anything like that, but it was a huge success. And to their credit, Arrowhead didn't run away with that success and say, okay, let's hire 1,000 people and fire 1,000 people when we can't pay them. So, good on Arrowhead for that. But yeah, I would just like to see, I think, more collab stuff. I also, strangely enough, because I think with Tokon and Wolverine and the Spider-Man games, I think we're kind of good on Sony doing all the Marvel stuff. It's nice, but again, I kind of like to see more other IPs. I'd even like to see them, again, my big thing is I'd like to see them maybe dip back into their pool of sort of Island of Misfit Toys and Forgotten franchises. I would like to see some other stuff come back. It would be nice, to see a new Jak and Daxter, even if it isn't at the most AAA of budgets or whatever. The problem is, again, I don't know who's going to make that game because Naughty Dog's certainly never going to do anything like that again. And, Microsoft gobbled up Activision's developers. I mean, Toys for Bob is technically freelance, but they're working on something else right now. So, this is one of the things where I kind of just wish Sony would. I wish Sony would remember, I guess, its history and its franchises beyond the PS4 era, because it kind of feels like anything from PS3 or before is just kind of gone. Gran Turismo exists, but that's it. And it's kind of a little sad because it doesn't feel like they're very nurturing some of their stuff before. Now, I am two minds about this, where I do think it's fine for games to have endings. I'm actually very happy with how, say, Uncharted 4 ended. Whether you feel it's the best or worst or whatever Uncharted game, at least it got a proper ending. We don't need any more Uncharted games, especially don't need any more Nathan Drake Uncharted games. I mean, if you wanted to do other characters from the franchise or new characters and call it Uncharted, sure. But I don't think we need, to necessarily, we don't need to extend Nathan Drake's story. His story is done and over, and I think it's cool that we actually got a video game franchise with an ending. So, I'm not saying like make a sequel for a sequel's sake, but it would be kind of nice to see some stuff kind of brought back that was kind of like sorely forgotten. I think if anything, the other thing I'd like to see from Sony is if they, since they have the leverage and they have seemingly like the brand awareness and whatever, I kind of wish Sony would get a little more aggressive, I guess, more on sort of like the Japanese side of developers. It feels like they're sort of resting on their laurels where they're like, look, we're like the only console game in town, not counting hybrids with Nintendo. So we just kind of assume everyone's just going to keep making games for us. It's like, oh, a new Resident Evil game? Of course it's going to, of course it's a PS5 game. A new Tekken game? Of course it's a PS5 game. Like, we don't have to worry about anything. But, it'd be nice if maybe say they went to Namco and we're like, hey, let's get like let's help fund or help like kickstart, maybe even if it's exclusive, like a big Tales game. Put some budget into it. Go to Capcom and be like, okay, we want a Power Stone, like we want to revive Power Stone just because we want it. So here's some money to make a Power Stone 3. Something like that, something just to leverage their sort of clout and whatever money they have, to just be like, hey, this doesn't have to necessarily be a $10 million selling game, but we would like to see it sort of like either brought back or something new. I guess what I'm really asking for Sony really here is to diversify their portfolio and kind of get away from that giant AAA budget, AAA sales mindset, and I think it's poisoning them. And again, like Astrobot should have, hopefully was this huge wake-up call, like smaller game, smaller dev team, smaller budget, huge success. I mean, again, the problem with Astrobot is that it wasn't like, say, this roaring success. Astrobot didn't sell 10 million copies. It should have. It deserved to, but it didn't. But I mean, if they can be happy with whatever 3 or 4 million sales Astrobot got, then I think there should be more of that. If anything, it's just like look towards that, like what Team Asobi did. And I think work towards that. Like, let's just have a bunch of smaller project games that are just full of passion, love, care, craft, and talent. And they didn't cost the bank. They didn't take forever to make. But they sell good enough to justify their existence. And they make money. So that's kind of what I would like to see from Sony, is sort of like maybe a push away from everything having to be a Ghost of Yotei or a Last of Us 2 or a Horizon 2 level release. Like, it's a little much. I mean, Saros is kind of close to that ideal, like, hey, this is kind of more what I'm talking about here. Like, it's a game that's like, okay, it's cool, and it's not a huge developer, and it didn't take them like 6 years to put this game out, but it's cool, and it's definitely like a follow up to the last title that everyone liked, even if it's not connected narratively. But yeah, this is definitely in that sort of wheelhouse. It's almost a shame that Ueda's gone, but hey, he's got his cool robot game coming. But yeah, like I wish Sony still had stuff like Team Eco, Shadow of the Colossus people making just sort of art house experience games like that still. But they are still doing it, and Epic's funding their newest one. But cool. But yeah, I think I want to see Sony sort of reach out, branch out, sort of diversify their portfolio a little bit in 26. Kind of keep that going with Saros and Tokon and Astrobot, and keep that going, because like, man, I'm sure Intergalactic is gonna be a cool game, no doubt. I'm sure it'll be fine. But talking about how it's likely the most expensive game Sony's ever had to budget is like that. It's almost a negative at this point, because it's kind of like, bro, Spider-Man cost $300 million. You spending $500 million to make your sci-fi Souls clone? Come on. I don't know if it's a Souls clone. I'm just sort of assuming there. I'm just guessing. But anyways, that's what I think for Sony. Let me know what you guys think about, Sony going into 2026, what you're excited about, and what you hope that they do, and what you hope to see coming from the company next year and beyond. And that'll do it for me for Sony, and I'll see you on the channel later, dudes.